Monster is the Bolliger Mabillard inverted roller coaster at Grona Lund, and I still cannot believe this ride even exists. Grona Lund is a small, fully developed amusement park in Stockholm, yet they somehow found a way to build a full-fledged inverted roller coaster that only necessitated the removal of one ride, a flat ride no less. In this video, I will explain how this coaster was even built, and review the on-ride experience since it's quite unique for the genre. Grona Lund had been eyeing a B&M invert since the mid-2000s. They wanted to build one in an adjacent parking lot. In 2009, they presented plans to build one along with a 100-meter Starflyer. Their goal was to have it open by the 2013 season for the park's 130th anniversary. However, things did not go as planned. The approval process faced countless obstacles and objections. It was clear this would take years to resolve. In fact, it took 13 years. Grona Lund just got approval to build in that parking lot in July of 2022. Rather than delaying their plans, the park found a way to fit both rides in the pre-existing park. The park placed an even bigger Starflyer and Eclipse atop a building in the 2013 season. They then turned their focus to cramming the B&M invert inside the existing boundaries. This was a much bigger challenge. Grona Lund is no stranger to building rides above existing structures. Gerstlauer built Wilde Musen in 2003. This wild mouse is placed atop multiple buildings and interacts mightily with the Jetline roller coaster. It even shares some supports with that ride. Vekoma built Kvasten in 2007. This ride went above the midway. To minimize the number of supports needed, the park built these giant columns with branch supports in each direction. So in a way, they look like big metal trees. Then in 2011, Gravity Group built Twister. This wood coaster is intertwined with multiple other coasters and also travels over the Blood to Get ghost train. So they want to take a similar approach with a B&M invert. However, these rides are not meant to be compact. They have wide track gauges and beefier supports than the other coasters Grona Lund had previously built. In the past, Grona Lund had always built up. This time, they decided to build down, well, at least at the start. They realized the most practical way to fit a station maintenance bay large enough for a B&M invert was to place it underground. They then would need to mimic the support structure of Kvasten to minimize supports. When Grona Lund approached Bolliger Mabillard, the Swiss company was skeptical and apprehensive. It was unlike anything they had done before, but the park convinced them to take on the project. In 2017, the park unveiled their proposed layout. Two things did change from the original rendering. First, the support structure was changed to be the more minimalistic design seen today. Second, the coaster was originally supposed to have a fourth inversion, a barrel roll above the brake run. This was eventually changed to a bunny hill instead. And this ride would fill a major void at Grona Lund. While the park already had 7 different roller coasters, none had any true inversions, at least with the track. The only coaster that could take you upside down was insane if the vehicles flipped, and thankfully they usually do. But the park hadn't had a traditional coaster with inversions since the 1990s, and the park doesn't have any inverting flats either, so Monster filled a much needed gap at this park. Construction began late 2018. The park started by digging the giant hole for the underground station. There were 3 complications with this. First, multiple buildings had to be demolished and redesigned just so they could start digging that hole. But amazingly, only one ride had to be removed, the park's adult bumper cars. Second, the park is just 40 meters or 130 feet from the Baltic Sea, so the park had to be very careful digging and blasting rock. But they eventually dug their cavern, and fun fact, they needed 3,500 trucks to remove all the rubble because they couldn't fit a large construction truck on the narrow streets of Stockholm. Third, since the park cares so much about appearances, they masked the construction site during the 2019 season with a temporary area themed to a carnival. And they even brought in a temporary ride in Snake. This was a Funtime Chaos Pendle and now operates at Skara Summerland, which makes sense because they're owned by the same parent company as Grona Lund. The coaster was scheduled to open in 2020, but was delayed until 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All of the park's hard work eventually paid off. This coaster looks fantastic. Grona Lund's midway is already at a ton of energy, and Monster is the icing on the cake. You'll see this coaster flipping overhead and spiraling above pathways. It is surreal seeing an invert like this zipping between buildings. It looks particularly sweet at night because the trains have these lights affixed to the bottom of them. Then you can also see the lift hill emerging from the cave at the start, and the brake run hanging back underground at the end. The black track isn't anything too flashy, but the pure placement is what catches your eye. This seems like something you'd see in Planet Coaster, not real life. And it is also one of the first coasters you'll see as you approach Grona Lund. If you arrive by ferry, this ride's drop goes right up next to the dock. Then once you enter the park, Monster's entrance is directly in front of you. But you may not realize this is even an entrance for a ride. It looks more like an ornate storefront of a fancy restaurant, especially because there's a coffee window to the right of the entrance. The ride's queue line is a bit annoying to navigate. It's a lengthy queue spanning multiple levels, but it is interesting at least. First, you have this fancy hallway upstairs. At the top, you have this oddly concrete room with some videos playing of the ride itself. Then you head outdoors onto the roof. This gives some sweet views of the coaster running by. Then you head back indoors and watch your step here. There is a surprise drop-off with no warning signs. Then you have multiple flights of stairs underground into the station. And because of how it's set up, there isn't a way to skip any of it, even if there's no one else in line. Since the park built an underground tunnel, they decided to theme the coaster to a subway station haunted by a monster. And this ride had an incredible commercial when it opened. It was filmed much in the mold of Stranger Things, with kids investigating a closed Grona Lund, only to find a giant monster sprouting upwards from the ground. It was pretty creepy. Based on that, I would have expected a decrepit or ravaged station. Instead, it's really fancy. You have tiled walls with all these posters hanging. Then you have light posts indicating which row you're queuing for. There's no theming in the main portion of the coaster, which is fine because the visuals are plenty exciting on their own. At least during my visits, Monster has been a walk-on for most rows all day long. The only wait was if you wanted the very front row, and even still those maybe just a train or two. The front was my favorite seat in this coaster mainly because of those visuals. It's the spot to be to accentuate all those near misses. But definitely try the back as well. It may have a smidge more force, and if you visit on a quiet day like me, you'll have better odds of being allowed to stay in the train for a re-ride. If you do visit on a busy day, this ride is included on the park's Jet Pass Skip the Line system. You book a 10-minute window, and you're sent directly into the station when your time is ready. Single shots for this coaster cost 120 krona, or roughly $11 each. If you buy your wristband online, the park gives you 2 complimentary jet passes for any ride of your choice. I don't know if these are offered if you buy your pass in person though. I also want to note that Grona Lund will close queue lines early, so the last train goes out exactly at park close. So plan accordingly if the park is busy and you want a night ride, which I do recommend. The lessened light combined with the near misses amplifies that sense of speed. Monster runs 2 trains. Each train has 7 rows of 4, so it holds a maximum of 28 riders. This gives it the highest throughput of any coaster at Grona Lund, which probably contributed to it being a walk-on for me. The crew also checks the trains very quickly. B&M inverts are easy to check. You have an over-the-shoulder harness with a secondary but external seatbelt. And it's interesting Monster has the older style trains with the hard over-the-shoulder restraints, not the vest restraints seen on Banshee at Kings Island. I believe this may be for 2 reasons. 1. Grona Lund had been planning an invert for over a decade. This predates the vest trains that B&M developed for the inverts. 2. I believe the trains with vest restraints have a slightly larger clearance envelope. That is not ideal when you have limited space to work with like Monster. And I like the classic invert trains on Monster. While the restraints are hard, this ride is extremely smooth, so you will not bash into the harnesses. There is also no rattle here, which sometimes can be an issue on some other B&Ms. Once dispatched, You head into a dark tunnel and turn slightly left. There, you'll encounter your lift hill, and this has some cool visuals. The park planted some ivy at the base. Then it's a fun reveal when you climb out of that subterranean tunnel and find yourself facing towards the Baltic Sea. The view going over the first drop is one of my favorite of any coaster, as you have the water directly beneath you. That drop is quite intense too. You are really pulled down it. It's a steep twisting plunge, similar to the ones found in the other newer inverts, like the aforementioned Banshee or Osiris at Park Asterix. You get a little floater airtime in the back row, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Since the twist does not kick in until you're halfway down the drop, the entire train is abruptly turned 180 degrees. It was a much wilder turn than I expected. It's pretty darn disorienting. Your body is thrown sideways, getting solid laterals. Then the pullout piles on the positive Gs, particularly if you're in the rear rows. I started to gray out back there. Next comes a big 0G roll over a building. It does not have the whip of an older B&M invert. Rather, it is graceful and extremely floaty throughout the train, which is fine by me because I like these types of inversions. The pullout puts you in this alleyway, and then you're immediately pulled upwards for a Junior Immelman. I know this technically isn't an inversion, but it definitely feels like one on ride. If you're riding up front, you are really pushed into it and get subjected to strong positive Gs. The forces are much milder towards the back though. This pullout goes over a building with grass on the roof no less. Like I said, Grona Lund really cares about appearances. Then you have a corkscrew. The train navigates it pretty slowly, but it still has an okay snap to it. It's sort of hard to explain, but it kind of feels like you're moving through it in slow motion, so I jokingly call it the drunken corkscrew. The following turn has some good force to it, and you also whiz past a building. Your feet will be mere inches from the wall. Then you rise upwards into this weird turnaround element. It has a shockingly tight 270-degree turn at the top. I honestly didn't know an invert could have a turning radius this tight. The front gets decent force throughout the entire element. The back gets their positive Gs in the second half of it. You then have another 0G roll. This one takes you over the ride's entrance. This one is a bit more oomph than the first one. The front will get some laterals as you rotate 360 degrees. The back gets pulled through it, while also getting some faint lift. Next is a forceful turn high above the midway. You narrowly avoid the rooftop beer garden, charge through a tunnel, and fly over this elevated bunny hill. While the airtime isn't too crazy, it's just weak floater, it is really neat to see an element like this on an invert. Usually, they're all about inversions and positive Gs. The coaster then has one more turn. This one runs right up against the funhouse and jet line, while also offering solid positive Gs. You then hit the brakes, but you don't come to a complete stop. Rather, you have a slow and controlled drop back into the underground tunnel. It looks really neat off-ride, but it doesn't really have any sensations on-ride. This is a controlled descent built purely for function, not thrills. You then return to the station, ending the 2,297 foot or 700 meter long coaster. I already touched on the smoothness, but what about the pacing? I really like the flow of this ride. It has a unique layout for an invert, and that's a product of the weird setting. The elements are all engaging, whether it be an enjoyable inversion or a forceful turn, especially because they're all paired with those near misses, and that makes this coaster feel considerably faster than it really is. So what would I rate Monster? I would give this invert an 8 out of 10. This is a really good coaster. While there are B&M inverts with bigger and more forceful layouts, Monster does a lot of things well. It has one of the best drops of any B&M looper. I love that sharp twist. Then the three inversions are enjoyably graceful, and the transitions hit you with nice positive Gs to contrast. And most importantly, you have the incredible visuals start to finish. These combined with a different layout allow this to stand out compared to the other inverts out there. I ultimately place this towards the middle of the pack for the B&M inverts. I do prefer quite a few of the bigger ones with more power to them, but this ride was simply pure fun and infinitely re-rideable. That's why I think it's my favorite coaster at Grona Lund now. And it was such a nice fit for this park. They finally have a true looping coaster, and it finally gives Scandinavia their very own B&M invert. So those are my thoughts on Monster at Grona Lund. What are your thoughts on this coaster? This really is an amazing engineering achievement. Are you as impressed that B&M somehow fit this ride in this park? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you consider subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.